from the MCPLive.tv studios, located in downtown Conroe, it's the Conroe Art League, live.
Hello, and welcome to Cal Live, the show that introduces you one by one to the artist of the Conroe Art League. My name is Jennifer Clausen, and I am pleased to be your host this afternoon. Today, I am speaking with Sarah Johnston. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to share your art and your story with Conroe Art League.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Sarah, where are you from originally?
I was originally born in Utah, but I have spent most of my life down here in Houston.
Oh, fantastic. So you've made yourself a native Texan then?
Yeah.
That'll work. Do you have a studio that you create out of at your home?
I actually just have made a corner of my room into my own studio. It used to be, I laugh about it because when my son was born, I had a baby gate around my stuff, and I was the one trapped inside of the baby gate. But since he's grown up a lot, I've really just kind of spread out and made it my space.
You gotta claim your space. If not, he will, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And have you always been creating art?
Yes, just about as long as I can remember. It's always been a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. I remember even in 4th and 5th grade, I was drawing on everything I could get my hands on. I was drawing little people and characters for my classmates, and it just has followed me for my whole life.
Very well. Did you continue that in education or do something else?
I took a lot of art classes in high school,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of summer classes and stuff like that, but I actually took college for architecture.
Okay.
I took about a year in architecture school, mm-hmm. officially, and then I worked for 3 years in architecture firms, and then everything changed course after my son was born, and then it all went into art. So I don't have formal art training,
mm-hmm.
but I have spent a lot of time on it.
As far as the architecture classes, I'm sure there are some that help you more with design and layout, so it's not completely lost in the art world.
No, not at all. It was actually a lot of fun, and I wish almost that real-life architecture was more like school was. It was very design-oriented. I had a lot of fun putting everything together and learning everything. They taught us about composition and all the different ways you had to put it together. Designing the building itself was really interesting, and mm-hmm. the way that you can really influence the way that people live their lives based off of how they feel in the space around them. There was a lot of it that I took away from architecture school, and I applied it in the workforce as well, but it has really stuck with me as I've gone into more traditional art.
Yeah, it's important to take little nuggets out of everything and use it to your own accord, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Are you influenced by any artists or architects?
Many. I very much love Van Gogh, and I really love, of course, I can't remember his name. Very, very famous. But as far as Van Gogh, I have always loved his work. I have many books on him, and I've followed his work around as much as I could. I really love the way he takes the way that he shows nature in his works, and how you can really tell how he feels about it. There's a lot of emotion shoved into every painting that I've ever seen from him. And then maybe you can help me think of the name of it. He is also an inventor.
Rembrandt?
No.
Da Vinci.
Yes, Da Vinci.
There we go.
Hard to believe I forgot that.
That's okay.
But I also have studied a lot of his work. I studied a lot of the way that he studied because of the way that he saw the world, the way that you could see he paid attention to all the details. He had equations for everything. Even the way you look at perspective. We just talked about this in my class, and I got a little excited about it because perspective is very interesting, and both of those artists had really good tools in order to use it. I mean, Van Gogh had his own frame that he made. He was very inventive in the way that he made sure that he was able to fully put his heart into it without that common stumbling block that a lot of us artists run into, where we find something that's difficult and then it's so easy to let it go and not ever quite get into the mode of really putting our heart into it. Same thing with all of Da Vinci's inventions, just in the way that he was able to find all the shortcuts so he could do what he truly was loving to do. And I'm sure he loved the inventions too, because he made a lot of them. But
yeah, I mean, the left brain, the right brain sort of scenario, that it's kind of this battle that you have with yourself of when to let go of one and embrace the other. And so you almost kind of need to find your own method of, getting to those finite details and having a process, but not letting that restrict you. So I can completely understand that very well. And as you create art, what are the subjects that inspire you the most?
I am most inspired by clouds and trees and the mountains. I found that they really kind of allow me to do kind of in between the two, the right brain and the left brain, because nature is just very organic. It allows you to make all the mistakes that you need to make while you're painting. Mm-hmm. Trees don't need to be straight. I used to draw a lot of buildings, and I used to draw a lot of people, and while both of those do have a lot of allowance in them, I have found that trees and clouds are just so variable that it allows my hand to shake while I'm painting, because unfortunately that is something that I do very often. And it also allows me to involve a lot of movement, because I find that in nature, the universe almost speaks through the world around us, to us, and we can feel it in the wind, we can feel it in the way the trees sound as the wind is going through them. And a lot of that also allows me to speak through them in my own emotions and feelings. I've spent a lot of years not sure how to say anything I needed to say, and so in order to say it, I was able to find my language in painting.
Yeah, surprisingly, I grew up as an introvert as well, and art was my language, and it's very therapeutic, and certainly finding not having to have that perfection with the organic shapes does allow for some nice, messy, I guess sometimes things just don't need to be perfect, I guess is what I'm saying. And you almost find beauty in non-perfection.
Mm-hmm. I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. It's a struggle. It's really hard to not try your best to force things into what you perceive as perfection. That was another thing in architecture. I remember specifically one of the assignments was we had to make cubes out of different objects. Some out of wood, some out of paper, some out of, all the things you can think of. And one of the things in the instruction was to make it to perceived perfection. It was amazing for me, because I was like, I can do this, because I love to make things perfect. But it was also torture, because I went through so many cubes trying to get to this. And so it's been a long time of trying to let it go, trying to make sure that I can feel myself and not feel like I have to make things perfect for other people to perceive it that way.
Yeah, I think it has to speak to people on a whole nother level that way.
I think so.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing your art here in a little bit, and we can dive into some of that.
Yeah.
And so are there any memberships or anything that you've had notoriety of that you'd like to share with us?
I don't know.
Possibly some awards or something that you've been given?
I have a few that I'm very proud of. It's been several years since I've put myself into any sort of competition or anything like that, but back when I was in high school, I entered a lot of competitions, and a lot of them were I entered wood carvings, as well as paintings and drawings and all the things, and I got a stack of awards back at home and ratings back at home, and those are a lot of fun. Back in high school as well, there was a kind of just a fun, like, graduating class kind of competition thing where we were voted amongst all of our graduating class, and I was voted as the most artistic, which surprised me. I mean, it didn't, because I always had portfolios with me. I always had sketchbooks and everything like that, but I was surprised that it was as obvious to other people as it may have been to me. So that is actually something I have sitting on my desk. It reminds me a lot that it really just is part of who I am, and it's part of what I just really love to do. So
I can also relate to that. Although I wasn't awarded most artistic in my school. And so how long have you been a member of the Conroe Art League?
I have been a member of the Conroe Art League since December of this last year.
Okay, and how have you found your experience with the Art League so far?
It's been great. Everybody that I've come into contact with has been really sweet. They've all been very helpful, and they've all wanted to encourage me and give me their tips and tricks on everything.
It's always nice.
Yeah.
I have found that there's always just a plethora of information and knowledge that the members have that are happy to share with you. So if you have a question, ask away.
Yes, very much. No, it's been great.
Well, let me take a look here. We'll go ahead and start looking at your images. Tell us some about this one.
So for this one, the idea to create it came from an art challenge, and I host art challenges about every 2 weeks on my Instagram. Mm-hmm. And this one, that I cannot pronounce the name of, roughly translates to the sound of the wind in the trees. As I was contemplating this, because I would put a prompt and I would allow everybody to choose their own way to do it, it gives a lot of freedom. What came to my mind was the idea of laying in the grass, looking up at the sky and seeing all the trees, because I find that when you're laying down and enjoying nature as honestly as you can, just the feeling of the grass on your back and the looking at the trees move and almost speak to you, that's just how it came out. And it was really cool being able to create it, because it gave me another challenge, because that's not the perspective that I usually use. Looking up at the sky is decently uncomfortable when you're trying to paint it, because you have to think about all the different layers to it. I wasn't sure where the trees were going to go, so I had to paint the sky and the clouds first, and then you lay down where the trunks go, and then you kind of fill in the spaces with all the leaves and the branches, and it was very challenging, but it was really, really good.
And did you paint that live or from a photograph?
I painted it from a few different photographs.
Okay.
Which is also surprisingly hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what nature lover hasn't laid down and looked up to the trees? And it's just such an extrasensory experience with lighting, with the sounds, with the air and the grasses, like you say, touching your skin. Yeah, it warms the heart just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, because I also find that a lot of it takes me back to my childhood up in Utah.
Okay.
And because I feel like when I lived down here in Houston, I spent a lot of my time at school. Mm-hmm. And then every summer and winter break, we would make our way up there, because most of my family is up there. And so all of my time that I had to relax and to just look around was up there. Mm-hmm. And so it's just really interesting how each of my pieces kind of throws me back to somewhere. Okay. And this one in particular does that for me.
Yeah, I think some of those childhood memories, they stick with us, and they have an impact on who we become as a person and what we want to share with other people. Mm-hmm. So I think that's obviously what you're doing in your artwork. All right, let's look at your second piece.
This one was done with a collaboration with another artist on my social media. This was another prompt where we decided we were going to paint rain.
Okay.
So the other artist that I was working with actually paints oceanscapes.
Mm-hmm.
So our art is a little bit different in a lot of ways, and so we were trying to find the best way to stick to ourselves, to stay true to our own style and our own work. And this one just kind of came out as I was thinking about it. I came across a few reference photos, and I also kind of pulled a little bit from Van Gogh, as we were talking about earlier, in the movement that he allows in his paintings. It was kind of a challenge being able to paint the wheat field. It was hard not to want to add every little detail, but I wanted to somehow show the movement without taking away from the sky, which was really the highlight of this painting.
Certainly, it's very emotionally charged, and I think you might even have too much competition if you were trying to highlight so many little strands of grass while you had such beautiful movement going on in the sky. So I like the way you pulled that off. And it does remind me of Wheat Field with Crows that Van Gogh painted. Just such a striking image with those bright oranges and ochres and yellows against the indigos and blues. It's just gorgeous.
Thank you.
All right, let's look at your third image.
Now this painting was another one in a series of paintings that I have. If you look through all of mine, you'll find that often you'll see this perspective of looking down the road as it curves off to the side, and some of the mist that really does show up a lot in my work. I found that this one was a very good representation of most of my work. And I've kind of also learned a lot about myself as I look through my paintings, which has been very interesting because I always feel like I just am not entirely sure how to express anything that I say or like anything that I'm feeling. And I learn afterwards what I was feeling before. And there's a lot of different ways that you can look at them, but it is just really fun to look at and to see that.
And you mentioned several of these you have on TikTok or Instagram,
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so what sort of process would you kind of explain in this sort of painting?
This painting really also highlights a technique that I really love to use.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the name of it, and maybe somebody more technically educated might be able to help me figure that out. But what I would like to do in paintings like this is I would take a cloth and I would get it just slightly damp. I would dip it in some titanium white, and then I would just rub it across the whole thing. Of course, you have to wait for the paint to dry completely, otherwise it would just smudge it everywhere. But it all came from the fact that I was tired of color mixing. Mm-hmm. There's many different ways to create depth in your paintings, especially in landscapes, and one of them is to make sure that the things that are farther away are lighter in color, and I was really just tired of trying to make sure I found the right color every time and every layer, and so I decided I was just going to smudge some white over it, and it really worked out. It also creates a good fog effect.
It does.
Which I also feel helps translate the whole piece together. So what I would do is I would paint the very farthest background that you wouldn't actually end up seeing in the end, and layer from there, and it was like 1 or 2 trees at a time as it came forward, so that painting has probably 10 or so layers. And I get a lot of comments on my TikTok and my Instagram videos about, like, does it ever make you sad that the stuff in the very back that you spent a lot of time on doesn't get seen? And the answer is sometimes yes. There are some phases of the painting that you can't see perfectly in the end, but you can always see that they're there. Mm-hmm. One thing that I don't think everybody quite realizes is that it really is a trust the process type of situation of while I'm working, I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. And then also, when you get to the very end and you look at it, in between all the trees, you can see the work that I put on before. And it really surprises some people, surprises me sometimes, especially in some of my videos where I highlight the cloth thing that I do. And people are like, oh, that scared me. And I'm like, me too. I never know. What if the paint's not dry all the way through? What if it messes it all up? And then I get to remind myself that it's paint, and I can just paint over it if I want to.
Well, I know you have quite a few followers, and it must be that ease and that fear that allow people to attach to you and to try it on their own, because otherwise it seems like this unattainable goal. And that sounds like you say, hey, it's okay. It might go wrong, but it's the end result that you come up most pleased with, and you never know where it's going to be, so just don't plan on that.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to remind people. I try to remind them as often as I can of just the fact that you don't really have to worry so much about it. I get a lot of people in my messages that ask, like, oh, how do you do this? It's really hard. I'm like, it is. Painting is hard, but it also doesn't really need to be, because as you're going, it's okay to change course, and it's okay to paint over what you were painting before. It's also okay to just put it away, because there are some paintings that my videos look really deceiving because it looks like I sat down and did them in one go, but a lot of them I've had to put away for like weeks to a month at a time of just like, I'll think about it later, because where I'm at right now doesn't match where it is, and I can't see the future for it, and so I'm just going to come back another time when it feels like it's right to do it.
That's fantastic. Do you plan to show your art at the Conroe Art League?
Hopefully.
Well,
I have actually been saving a few of my paintings and not listing them online so I can show them in person, because it's been a few years.
well, I hope people get to see them when you do that. And if someone wanted to see your work or contact you, where would they go?
You can find me on Instagram and on TikTok. On TikTok, it's just Brilliant. On Instagram, it's Brilliant_official. I also have a website that is linked on both of those, where I have a portfolio that you can look through, so you don't need to scroll all the way back into my social media.
Now tell me a little bit more about this Brilliant. I notice your paintings are signed with that name.
So it all started back in high school. My friend and I were writing kind of a book together, and we each had our different characters that we focused on, and hers was Brilliant. I honestly remember her pronouncing it differently, but for some reason it stuck to me that way, and I didn't intend for it to become what it has become. It was originally just because the username was available. It always was. It's not a very common word, and so I used it on TikTok, and then it started gaining traction, and people would recognize me by that name, and so I just kind of grew into who I was, and then I decided that it was going to be my pen name, essentially, because I am such an introverted person, and it was hard for me to get my face in front of everybody else, and I was able to just let them remember it as Brilliant, and so I signed my paintings as Brilliant. I remember the transition between signing it with my own name and then changing it. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy you put yourself out there, regardless of the name, and I think that will be very memorable for people. Oh. Well, if you'd like to see more of Sarah's work, as well as the work of the other artists at the Conroe Art League, please come visit us in historic downtown Houston at 127 Simonton Street. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Join us at the gallery, where we live by our creed: create, appreciate, learn.